racing. I can't stay off of it. I ended up finding a couple of parts on the old marketplace that I've been wanting for a while and couldn't pass up. So we're heading out there now to grab them. I getting a pretty good deal on it. These getting a set of the RAS or radioactive, whatever they are, the reactive traction bar mounts for 1990. They say like 1990 to like 2010 they all fit the same. So I don't think these are RAS brand because they don't look like RAS brand. Like the brackets are different. But we'll see whenever we get there and see what happens. Well, we got them picked up. Definitely not the prettiest in the world, but they're mine, and they were pretty cheap. So if you look them things up on the old interwebs to buy, they're anywhere from like $490 to $600. So I messaged this guy and asked him what he wanted for them, and he said, I don't know, shoot me an offer. I said, I got $75 if you want it. And he was like, as long as you pull it yourself, that'll be fine. And I get there, and these are not identical to the RAS ones, but how these are meant to be mounted, they hook underneath the U-bolts, and you got to take the U-bolts off. Well, luckily the guy before me, I guess, wanted the U-bolts or something because the U-bolts was missing. So it literally took me 5 minutes, and I had everything pulled out of there. So it worked out good. Hey guys, what's going on? So quick little update video, just something to do, something I'm going to do, and figured it's somewhat interesting. I ended up picking a set of these up for the Blazer. These are very, very similar to the RAS suspension. I'll find a picture or something to put in. But these are very, very similar to the RAS suspension. I don't know what you technically call these. They're like a traction bar, but they're not. They're like it's a reactive traction bar. But I picked these up, good price, $70 for the pair used. They're pretty rusty, dusty, and crusty, so we're going to be cleaning them up today. But I figured I'd just do a little before and after, show y'all, kind of explain what it is, and then it's dark out, but I might get them thrown on tonight because they're not that hard. It only takes like, I don't know, 5 minutes aside, so that ain't too bad for 10 minutes worth of work. Still got to do that one. I think I'm just going to never seize like this entire thing and then clean the nuts up and put them back on there. Threads ended up coming off just fine. So for people that learn visual, this is a basic, like a terrible drawing setup, but this is your basic explanation as to why you would do this. So your stock leaf springs, or your leaf springs whenever you're sitting normally, like at idle or resting, they look like this. And when you're driving, they have the nice U shape that everybody knows a leaf spring look like. But whenever you step on it and you step on the gas, it puts a whole bunch of force. It wants to, this being obviously your rear end, it wants to take the rear end and bring the rear end up, which, because these are connected, this is your leaf spring, this energy has to go somewhere. So it will end up putting an S in your leaf spring. Because of all the force you're applying, it's bringing the leaf spring up, and then it curves back down and hooks back into the leaf spring eyelet. And that's not good. This is how you break U-joints, because it puts a whole bunch of bind, and whenever you've got your rear end and your drive shaft are at a severe angle, when your rear end and your drive shaft are at a severe angle like that, U-joints don't like to be at that kind of a angle, and that's how you break stuff. Or if the angle's not what breaks it, whenever this energy, because this energy has to go somewhere, so if you slip a tire and it unloads this rear end, all of this force slams the rear end back flat again, and then that all chatters your drive line and can tear a bunch of shit up. So basically, what these do, this hooks on to your front eyelet, and then this hooks on right over top of your lift block, or right in the center of the leaf spring. Like this is crudely drawn here with your hook, your spring, and then your bracket. And all this does is it essentially pinches these 2 points together and squeezes that, keeps that U in it. That's all it's doing. So you can also achieve this with a traction bar that will not let the rear end go forward and up any. It stays in the same spot. However, we're going to be doing both. I picked these up for a steal. I can build traction bars for about $150. So we're going to be doing both. This is just cheap insurance, as well as this will also, you can kind of manipulate a marginally stiffer spring rate with these, with how tight you crank them. Not that I want to do that, but it's adjustability that you can have. So, but that's a basic setup of why you do this. So I'm going to get these, and it's a terrible explanation of it, but that is the explanation of what you're doing and what we're trying to prevent here. Custom Offsets does really good video explaining axle wrap and doing a set of track bars on the truck and what they do. This does the same thing. However, it's a little bit less, I would say, well, it's reactive, so it reacts with how much load is being applied to the truck. So I don't know, better or worse, I don't know, but we're doing both to make sure that we'll be equally covered. If you want to see a better explanation, go watch Custom Offsets videos on why traction bars are so important. So, but yeah, so we're going to go get these thrown on. So the one thing I didn't think about was the fact that it is going to be damn near impossible to get this hooked into the front because of the angle of this U, trying to get it fit in between the bracket and the eyelet. That's going to be pretty hard to do. And the guy that I got these off of, I went and pulled these myself off a truck. He had them hooked up to the rear, but because I have the shackle flips on this, I don't have room there because it's meant to be, this is supposed to be below this to where you could hook it on in the rear. However, I don't think you're supposed to hook them on in the rear anyway, because if you hook them on in the rear, when you hook them on in the rear, it's going to want to pull the front end up to pinch it, which is already making the S that we're trying to prevent. So it's supposed to go to the front, but I'm going to have to undo these front bolts and then lift the truck up and get the front to droop so that I can slip the hook in there and grab it. And then I'll be able to bring it back and actually do this. All right, so get your truck jacked up. Nice thing about a drop hitch is you can get a really low point of contact with the ground. So get your truck jacked up to where your tire is basically all but off the ground. And then we're gonna come up here on the front, undo that bolt, let that eyelet out nice and easy, and then slip that bracket in and move on. All right, we got that one busted loose. So I'm gonna just give the jack a couple of pumps, and we should be able to slip this one in there. Okay. Oh. This should have enough wiggle room on it now. Yeah, we ought to be able to get that in there now. So you'll just take your, of course, two hands would make this infinitely easier. But you'll basically just take this and slip it in there. Just like that. Jack it back up, put your bolt in, make sure everything's gonna clear, nothing's gonna rub, and you're done with that part. My only other tip for you guys is whenever you're putting these back in, because I feel like most people don't mess with these front bolts, everybody always messes with the rears, is because the spring is decompressed. This is wanting to move in and up from where the eyelet actually is. So the easiest thing I found is just hook a ratchet strap up to the axle somewhere. I just used my traction bar mounts, but just hook it up and get the wheel pulled back forward to where it's basically in line with the hole. And then all you've got to do is pull down on it just a little bit to get it to line up, because otherwise it's really hard to pull it forward and down or forward and up, however it wants to go. So I found that to be the easiest way to do it. And if you get it positioned right, it should just fall right in there. So it beats wrestling it or having to have a buddy over here with you to do it, because having to have a friend over here with you every single time you do anything on a truck, I mean, it's nice, the company, but sometimes we just don't get that convenience whenever we're trying to build something, having to wait on somebody, especially when it's crunch season. So get that one in and then pop her free and you're home. You're good to go. Snug it up and then we can move on to the bracket itself. Mounting it to the top of that dealio. And the only other thing is obviously clearances you want to check. Make sure nothing's going to touch or hit, because it will make a ton of noise if it's going to be screeching on something. But we're clear and home free on that. There's a finger's width worth of room in there, so we're going to move on. And then all we're doing up here in the front is putting in this bracket right here. We have got to undo the U-bolts because this goes underneath this retainer plate all the way at the bottom, and then this plate goes back This plate goes on top of this, and then these U-bolts obviously go back in their stirrups. I'm thinking this is probably for a Ford or a later model 2-post truck. It doesn't really matter for what we're doing. And once you got them loose, you can wiggle these U-bolts up. There we go. Goodness. Need to get a mallet for them real quick. Let me grab one. Obviously, grab you a mallet. Don't grab you a normal hammer. You don't want to mess these threads up. Come in here and give these a little pop. There we go. Get them freed up and scoot it out of the way. There we go. That's the only one that really needs moved. And then you can take that off. Wow. That needs a coat of paint that we're probably not going to give it. And then you can set this in here like this. And that's about it. And just like that, we got both sides done. Could not, unfortunately, find a nut for the top of that. However, I am going to get one for them. But for now, it's just resting on top. And as far as tensioning these, I don't really know like what the recommended load is for it. I know you can really crank on these. So all I did was, this is at full droop. The truck's still jacked up right now, so the tires are like just barely resting. So all I did was took it and snugged it up until there's not really, like, you can still move them. You can still move them, but they're fairly snug. And I'm just going to tighten up both of the bolts and then set it down. So at full droop, it's shorter. So snug it, and then whenever it goes to full compression or to like ride height, we should start to see just a little bit of separation in these coils. So because right now they're all touching still. So, but I'm going to get that secondary bolt on this one snugged up, let it down, and then we'll see what it looks like. And just like that. Put her down nice and easy. We should be able to see that spring slowly start separating. Oh, there she goes. Which is in turn putting the preload on that we need. I'm gonna let it down all the way. All right. Okay. Oh yeah. All right. Yep. Just a little bit of separation. Yep, that's tight now. Awesome. I'd have to do just a tiny bit of cutting right there, or just let it rub, to be honest. And then that is not touching, but it's darn close. That's it. That's what it looks like done. Cool. Just another thing to help it, hopefully keep it from axle wrapping. So, and the same thing on this side. Yep. Cool. This one should be just as tight. Yep. Awesome. And just that little bit should help a good amount. Yeah, you can feel it. Rear end's a little bit more stiff. So that's cool. Now, the one thing that I will say about those sprung bars, traction bar, RAS bars, whatever you want to call them, they're not technically intended for like stepping on an axle wrap. They're more intended for like towing and keeping the rear end solid and not moving when it's under a bunch of load. Because if you ever pull the trailer, you know that the rear end feels like it's kind of washed out. It's moving all over the place. So they're not technically intended for that. However, they can provide a little bit of a faux spring rate. You can make the leaf springs in the rear technically a little bit stiffer by pinching them. It puts a little more preload on them, which is what I wanted, because this truck, I mean, if you've ever drove an OBS, you know they're very floaty from the factory. And that's fine, and it rides great, but when you got a truck this tall, you really don't want the truck falling all over the place. And you can stiffen the front end up with the torsion keys, which, I mean, it lifts the truck while it does it, but you can firm up the front ride height. But in the rear, the only thing you can really do is a shock. And I don't want to do shocks right now. So that is an option. You can do that. Like I said, they're not intended to do it. I'm going to do it, as well as the other thing is the more load you put on it, the more intense the spring rate gets. So it's kind of like having a secondary or a overload spring in a way. It functions as that. I don't tow with the truck really at all. I have towed with it a couple of times, but not really anything crazy. It's just like a little 12-foot enclose. But so it's not technically what they're meant to be for. But I got them for a really good price. Like I said, they're like $500 if you buy them brand new. I got it for $75 plus probably $10 in fuel driving there and back. It took me 3 minutes to get them off. But that is, just clearing that up. So, but next thing I got to do is the rear shocks. I need to get the spacers made for the rear shocks. I have the front shocks made real quick, which I can show. So I have the front shock spacers made. They're not the prettiest in the world, but I wanted extra tall ones to make sure that these shocks were back in the right spot. So I dropped it 5 more inches than it was before, and that is a 5-inch shock spacer. So, and I still need to do the sway bar end links in the front. I still need to get them done. I still need to do the 513 gears in the rear end and get that done, as well as I still need to swap it out for the 2-wheel drive transmission and get that done. And then mechanically, that's all I have left to do, and then get my drive shaft lengthened, obviously. So, but it's about it. Slowly knocking her out. This is so much better. This is so much better than show season last year. This time, last year, this truck was blown apart and it didn't even have a lift kit on it yet, and the motor wasn't even in it. And I only had like 2 months until Music City, so we're in a lot better shape than last year. This truck can physically go to Music City and to a couple other shows. It just will need to be trailered, and it wouldn't be a smart idea to let it leave the event until I get the drive shaft fixed. Otherwise, it's going to punch the transmission out of the truck. But we're in way better shape than we were last year. Little update video, nothing too crazy. Kind of off topic realistically. We're going to get back on it here probably at the end of this week, maybe next week. Hopefully I'll have a video up again on getting basically sway bar end links and shocks done all the way around. And then we might do the gear swap. I am not taking the rear end out of the truck. Rear end is staying in the truck. Brakes are staying hooked up. I'm reusing everything that I can outside of maybe like seals, because I do need to put new axle seals in both sides whenever I do it, because they are bad. But that'll be a video on its own, doing the rear end and then swapping the drive shaft for the 2-wheel drive shaft, which is right here. So that is the transmission that's going in it. I'm probably going to reuse the torque converter that's in the truck, because I don't know the condition of that torque converter, and I don't want to put that converter in there and have it wipe out that transmission. I know the converter that's in the truck is good. So transmission's supposed to be good. $200 marketplace special. So, But if anybody needs a 4-wheel drive trans, I'm going to have 2 4-wheel drive transmissions, 2 front transfer cases, 2 front drive shafts, or my bad, 2 transfer cases, 2 front drive shafts, and 2 front diffs. One's a 342 gear diff, and one is a 373 gear diff. So if anybody needs one, they will be available. Local to Clarksville, Tennessee area if you need it. So just let me know. This one also comes with a complete wiring harness. The cleaned up diff is the 342. And the dirty one is the 373, I believe. I'd have to double check it, but I think that's how it goes. So the transfer cases are around here somewhere, so I'll have to find it. I don't know where it went. But that's everything. So another quick little update video. I'll catch y'all next week.